Hello and welcome to Green Pass Gaming. I'm your host Phlapp, and as always, after a week off, actually, in the co-hosting hot seat, we have Puxley.
Hello, thank you,
How you
Phlapp.
doing?
How are you? I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all good. Thank you very much. All good. Good week off.
Yeah, very good, thanks.
Good.
Very much needed. Went away, looked at some wedding venues. If anyone would like to know where I was,
Okay.
so that all went well. So yeah, back and ready to chat.
Well, good to have you back. Sitting in your shoes last week, we had VJ, and no stranger to the show, we also have him on again this week. Hello, VJ.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me back on, Phlapp. I really appreciate the opportunity.
You're more than welcome, mate. You know, your views and opinion take us down different routes sometimes. You know, I come up with these sort of topics for discussion and stuff. And sometimes, you know, the guests kind of throw you a bit of a curveball, but I like that because it's kind of organic and we go down places that is obviously on everyone's mind. So no, that's cool. That's cool. And first time to the show. He's a community veteran. He's very big on Twitter. Host his own community game night. I would very much like to welcome to the show Mr Tushi. Welcome, sir.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have you done many podcasts before? I think you've done a couple before, haven't you?
Probably about 4. I think.
Okay, well, we'll ease you into this one. So normally do a quick round of what we've all been up to. We'll start with you, Mr Tushi. Actually, what have you been up to this week? What have you been playing game-wise?
Game-wise, I've been playing Tony Hawk's, the remaster.
Oh, nice.
Just come out.
Enjoying that?
I've actually tried to get back into Destiny 2 as well.
Oh, wow.
Well,
that's good.
Help of stubs because I haven't got a clue what I'm doing, and I enjoy the game. I just still don't know what I'm doing.
No, that's cool. I didn't get Tony Hawk's in the end. I need to get that game because there's so many nostalgic memories for me in that game that I absolutely must get that. The trouble is, there's so many games, isn't there, at the moment, particularly with Game Pass. You know, they're just one after the other, and I still haven't really played Flight Sim properly. Yeah, and I'm quite a big Flight Simmer, to be honest. But Puxley, what have you been up to?
So I've actually been recently playing a little indie title called, I'll probably pronounce this wrong. It's either Carrion or Carrion.
Carry on. Yep.
Carrion. Yeah, I've really enjoyed that. I've actually just finished it earlier today. I'm just kind of doing a bit of an achievements cleanup now. But no, that's a really good game. I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah, I've put my teeth into sort of Carrion a little bit. Got had quite a lot of fun with it, actually. VJ, what have you been up to?
Actually, my wife's been hogging the family TV watching the US Open tennis. So I've been on my Switch playing Luigi's Mansion.
You've been demoted to the sofa.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah. So thank God for the Switch.
No, that's cool. Well, hi to the chat, everyone in the chat. We've got some good chat going on at the moment. Puxley tends to look after the chat. Please feel free to join in. This show is kind of about you guys, really. It's a little bit like Mr. Tushi does. You know, it's a community-based thing. I know we're the guys up here kind of doing this, but you know, we want to give you the topics you want to hear. We want you to get involved in the topics that we're discussing. So, and the first one is a topic that, you know, this is obviously a relatively new show. We're literally about 5 weeks old, believe it or not, and our sub count's been going through the roof, and I'm really grateful to everyone. Lots of people listen after the show. Hi to everyone in the chat. But this topic kind of, I think most sort of podcasts probably have to cover this topic at some point, and I thought, you know, let's get it out of the way early. But this one is kind of about fanboyism and the discussions around that, really. And I don't want this to sort of deteriorate into a fan in the flames of the console wars or anything like that. This is a kind of a subjective look as to what fanboyism is, why it exists, and for me particularly as an Xbox gamer, why it always seems to be Microsoft that are taking a bit of a hit over what they do, even the good news stories. I think we're a fairly sensitive bunch as gamers. And I don't know, you have to take a lot of stuff on the chin sometimes. Microsoft this week came out with a story that they'd produced 825 carbon neutral Xboxes. Now, this was actually first reported back in September 2019, and they actually did that during the cycle run of the Xbox One X, I believe. But they reposted it recently with, unfortunately, a picture of the Series X next to it, and a certain corner of the community, shall we say, kind of picked it up and ran with it and put a negative spin on it and saying, you know, this is the Xbox Series X launch numbers, and there's going to be a shortage of consoles, and Microsoft were quite quick to jump all over that. But I'm going to come to you first, VJ, if you don't mind. I'm just keen to understand, and I appreciate there's kind of a scientific explanation behind this as well, perhaps, but I'm just keen to understand the fanboyism and kind of where it comes from and why it exists. I mean, have you got any theories as to what's going on with fanboyism?
Yeah, it's interesting you use the word scientific. That's just got my brain churning. So you've got fanboys, backbenchers, or extreme followers, whatever you want to call them. I personally believe that there are a set of individuals that have forgotten that technology is just a sort of an application born out of scientific experimentation. So sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful, but technology for me, and I kind of said this about a couple of weeks ago on Boom's channel, should primarily be for the development of people, communities, and humanity. Basically, gaming for me is there to engage people's imaginations and influence like kind of future creativity. The way I see it is that you've got some really intelligent, smart people, and you've got equally foolish individuals that have a deep, maybe sort of like an unhealthy attachment rather than just a preference. And I think there's a distinction between the two. I mean, you just have to look at around modern day society, really. I mean, it's present across politics, religion, sports, tech, music, not just video gaming, in my opinion. And I think we're all sort of seemingly intelligent, but few of us are actually really wise. I mean, I was just watching something. I remember something when I used to watch back in England, just on the off chance, especially when I used to be sick off school. Watching, I don't know if you remember, like on the BBC too, they used to have like these Parliament broadcastings going on. Okay. And you'd have like the two speakers poking at each other, you know, members of Parliament sort of debating certain topics and points of view. But if you just look at those guys, right, sort of the pinnacle of our society and supposed to lead the country, they both spout very clever jibes at each other. Both speakers then sort of kind of lose their demeanor and their poise. And then you've got the backbenchers, and they sort of echo like an approval or disapproval via heckles or jeers, right, as if they were still children at a school pantomime. So when I see that and relate it to like what you've just asked, I see an essence of fanboyism sort of come to mind. But more importantly, what it also, for me, it sort of portrays is like a lack of respect and wisdom in such proceedings, with like, which so kind of, if you look at Parliament, that actually filters down into society, right? And
I kind of get that though, VJ, but the thing that kind of gets me with this particular sort of fanboyism is that, you know, I could kind of understand Android versus Apple, that someone's going to pick a side because, you know, you probably don't need one of each of phones to actually satisfy that technology gap in your life. Do you know what I mean? You know, a phone is a phone. You pick one, you kind of stick with it. But when it comes to games consoles, surely the only winners of any kind of console war are the people that own multiple platforms of console. So it just seems odd to me that you would pick one over the other and then run at the other team with a spear. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally get that. But I guess that comes back to like, there are sort of very few intelligent people or wise people, right, in the community, right? No one sees these things as like bringing community together, right? They think this is mine, this is my control. They start to wave a flag, and that's why. I mean, I don't want to go into politics and religion and all that. It's not this type of show, but it's like, do you see? There's like seems to be more foolishness than love, right? If you want to look at it at a really sort of at that level, right? And speaking of like, you know, unhealthy attachments, that's what I think it is, because it's not something that's just become present today, right? It's happening over like over a span of history, really. It's a bit like yourself, right? If you lay out like, I mean, talking of unhealthy attachments, if you laid out, you know, a plate of Swiss mini rolls alongside a sort of probably a rare spot of tea, I'm definitely going to be eyeing up the last one.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Mr. T, I'm coming to you next, if you don't mind. Do you think that, you know, because like I say, we're kind of a sensitive bunch, and I am at heart an Xbox gamer. I'm not anti-PlayStation at all or anything like that. I'm not anti anything really, because like I say, I think the only winners in any console war are the people that kind of own all consoles. But do you think it's kind of worse? Do you think Microsoft actually take a worse rep than Sony?
100%.
Why is that? What is it about the Microsoft brand, or perhaps the Sony fans that portrays that? I don't quite get it.
It's hard to explain. It's like hang on, I'm getting an echo in my speakers. That's better. It's like, for example, if anything happens on Xbox, it could be positive, and it will still people will just bash it and turn into a negative. I own both consoles, and there's a lot of problems with the PlayStation side that everyone keeps an absolute hush hush about, and it's never ever spoken. And
this is the strange thing, isn't it? Because I guess part of my question to yourself is is it as bad on the other side? I'm not suggesting there aren't Xbox trolls and fanboys out there, but perhaps it's a numbers game. Do you think just because Sony did outsell Xbox One this console generation that's safety in numbers?
It's hard to explain. It's been going on for years. It's just getting worse and worse, I think, especially during this pandemic when everyone just stuck at home. I think it's just drove everybody insane. But the it's even I remember back in primary school when everyone would be bragging about who's got the better, who's got a Mega Drive, who's got a SNES, and so it was only just like laughing jokes back then. But it gets really personal lately.
It does, doesn't it? I've noticed that, and I don't understand. For me personally, and like you say, as a multi-console owner, it's actually quite nice to sit back and watch the big companies sort of battle it out between them. Because if there's any sort of console wars, it should really kind of be the marketing departments of the big players, as it were. But it just seems strange that the fan base kind of pick up and run with it themselves with silly stuff. Like I say, they don't necessarily tend to boost perhaps their own brand so much as sort of trying to destroy the other one. But it just seems odd, doesn't it? Because the happiest gamer is surely one that can play on multiple consoles at any one time. That's how it seems to me.
Yeah, definitely. If you see an advert or trailer for something coming out, you can play it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the way I see
well,
it.
you got barred from game. I'm keen to know what happened there.
Oh, okay. Game shop in UK. I got banned from 2 shops. What it was, you're in there, and the staff will come over to you and ask you, "Is there anything you're looking for? Is like trying to be nice and stuff?" So, yeah, I'm after this game. And he said, "What console?" I said, "Either, but I'd rather have it on Xbox." And I said, "Well, why don't you have it on PlayStation?" I said, "I don't want it. I prefer achievements, and I prefer my friends are all on Xbox, and I want to buy it on the Xbox." And they're like, "Yeah, but it runs better. Everything's perfect on the PlayStation. You get problems, and they're just pushing the console wars in the shops as well." I think they're on commission to sell PlayStation stuff over Xbox stuff. The most recent one I was in a shop and I was talking to a guy, and he wanted to buy an Xbox One X, and he went to the till, and the guy was pushing him to buy a PlayStation 4. But in the end, he nearly walked out of a PlayStation, even though he wanted an Xbox. And I was talking to the guy at the same time, and the staff basically said, told me to stop interfering in their conversation and stuff. And I just told him, "Look, you're pushing someone to buy something that they don't want." He wanted an Xbox because his friends are on Xbox. And he kept telling me, "Oh, there's cross-play. You can play on PlayStation against Xbox." And because that's only a few games, it's not every single one. But in the end, he walked out of an Xbox what I wanted in the end.
That's a very interesting point.
I had a big argument with staff. They're trying to keep pushing. It's just the staff pushing sales of stuff out. But I'll try and get my words out now. It was basically years ago when the new consoles were coming. They were pushing everyone to buy a PlayStation. They were constantly speaking negative, saying, "Oh, it's crap on Xbox. You've got DRM, the 24-hour sign-in." They was talking about this stuff, but what they didn't know about is on PlayStation there was a 3-day sign-in, 72 hours check-in, same as Xbox. But
yes.
It was always kept quiet about that. But they were always just bashing the Xbox. All the staff, and I just went ballistic at the staff, just telling them they're just console warring in the shop, trying to push all the. I think it's more to do with. So I'll explain. I think it's more to do with the PlayStation fans. They buy more physical than Xbox is more like a gen ahead. We're buying just digital only, and maybe they fear their job. I don't know. It's a weird one.
That is a bizarre one, and you know what? You've actually highlighted a topic I was going to probably raise a couple of shows ago, actually, about retail and about its actual future with obviously Sony and now Microsoft. If the Series S has an all digital version, what that means for the retail on the high street, to be honest. But that's a topic that I've got in my back pocket for a little bit later on, perhaps. No, thank you for that, Mr. Tushi. And you're right. Perhaps there is an agenda going on that that we're not quite so aware of. I know there's plenty of YouTubers out there that they seed hate and they see the negative side of things. And I've known a few YouTubers. There was a couple that I was watching particularly, and I won't name names. This isn't about that, but and they kind of flip flop. And I think when they realised that PS4 was going to be a big deal, that they kind of flipped from Xbox over to PS4, but nothing for nothing more than probably extra views. And that was quite sad to see because they just spend every video bashing everything they can about Microsoft, and some of the clickbait titles are just outright lies, and it does infuriate me as an Xbox gamer, and a little bit like yourself, Mr. Tush. The guy that just wanted an Xbox to play because his mates are on it. I just don't get it. It's bizarre. We'll go around again. Pux, what's happening in the chat at the moment?
Yeah, so regarding what we're talking about currently, I've got two particular ones comments I've seen. So first one is from Wakanda Xbox News Today. Thanks for tuning in. So he says, or they say, my opinion is the one console owners, not all of them, seem to have a one-upmanship mentality. My bit of plastic is better than your bit of plastic. And I think this is very much similar to what VJ and Mr. Tushi was saying about, especially this, I view that as kind of like playground mentality. I mean, I very much remember when I was in school about 10 odd years ago, which was mainly during the 360 and PS3 saga. Most of my school friends had Xboxes. Obviously, there were a few other acquaintances in my school which did have PS3s, and there was very much that playground mentality of, PS3 sucks. No, Xbox, PS3 sucks. Xbox 360's worse. There's this back and forth, and PS3's got this game, and you go, but Xbox has got Gears of War and all these other exclusives, and it's that kind of. I mean, back then it's funny, right? 'Cause it's on the playground, and I don't think anyone takes it as seriously then, but I think in today's world where a lot more people are more vocal online, right? So I don't know whether or not we are maybe seeing that playground mentality from possibly younger people, which is just making its way online more quickly, or whether it's. I mean, maybe we are reading comments from grown adults who maybe haven't quite gotten out of that phase of needing to have the upper hand, similar to as Wakanda says. And similarly, if you don't mind me continuing,
That's right.
There's another comment I saw from Sweshy Gaming. Again, thanks for tuning in. So they say, after 2013, everyone wants to find reasons to criticize. And of course, this is around the release of the PS4 and the Xbox One. And as we all know, the Xbox One launch had a, how do we say it? A lot of issues at the beginning, I think is probably the safe way to put it. So yeah, I think it probably comes down to marketing issues, at least at that time, right? And maybe what we're really seeing is the kind of long-term effects of bad marketing for your console at launch, maybe.
Well, that's a very interesting point, and that actually brings me onto a question I need to push back to VJ, actually. And to be honest, Wakanda Xbox News Today and both Fugly have kind of picked up on this, because how much of this do you think is actually sat in the platform holders' laps? Now, I ask this question because the marketing department. Well, okay, let's rewind a tad. The one thing that. The definitive thing that can fuel console wars are numbers, strangely enough, because numbers are definitive, and it's easier to say, well, my number's bigger than your number, and that's what tends to get used in these console wars. Now, I'm sure we all remember 2013 when PS4 could do every single game at 1080p natively, although it couldn't, but that was the narrative, and obviously everything on Xbox One was either 900p, 720p, and something less, and so PS4's number was basically bigger than PlayStation's number. PlayStation's number was bigger than Xbox's number. Now, this time around, obviously, I think like Fugly said, in fact, Wakanda said, the Microsoft execs walked away with that with bloody noses. They really did, because they were on the back of probably a lot of success, and they got complacent, a little bit like PlayStation did after the PS2. They get complacent and they start taking things in a different direction, whereas Sony was very much still on the numbers. We're a machine, we can do this. Now I've got a theory, because Nintendo don't really seem to be part of this console war. They tend to do their own thing, but part of this, I believe, is perhaps because their marketing department doesn't really market numbers so much. They don't really market the teraflops. They don't market this. They don't market that. It is literally about the games and the innovation around the console. So I guess my question, VJ, how much of this is to blame for Microsoft, because they're pushing the teraflop narrative at the moment, and again, it's our number's bigger than your number thing, and everyone seems to be running with it, and it's just a stick to beat the other side up with. How much of the marketing departments are to blame from the platform holders?
It's a really interesting question, Phlapp, but I think you have to go. See, there's two things. There's one, you have to go back into the history of Microsoft to understand why they are where they are now. Mm-hmm. For me, Microsoft are on one side of the coin, and then you've got Sony and Nintendo on the other side. So I'll try not to take too long, but just interject. So if you want to understand, like, America is Microsoft country. It's loved here, but not anywhere else in the world. So if you want to grasp the hate issue with Microsoft, I can't find a more diplomatic word at the moment, so sorry about that. But I think you have to look as far back as Bill Gates and what he stood for. Bill Gates' principle and style of working was to acquire, dominate, and control any area of any industry he would get into by making sure that he maximized revenues and report to profit, focus on profits and shareholders. That was his mantra. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong or anything.
So overly aggressive.
It was, and I'll give you a couple of examples. It was never but the key thing, it was never about creativity or something of that nature. Those were the seeds, the roots, the philosophies. Those are still there in the foundation of Microsoft today, no matter how they try to dress it up. During the 90s, I might be showing my age here, so I apologize. Windows frustrated so many people for a long time with its 4 sticks, expensive upgrades. I remember them. Otherwise, like certain software or games wouldn't work. Microsoft took so long, and that's fair enough. Microsoft, but just then, when you raise these issues, it took so long to fix bugs and crashes. Microsoft product was a requirement, but not friendly or loved. The brand's dominance was acknowledged, but never respected or celebrated. Microsoft built a dominating and controlling brand, not a creatively led one. They took advantage and were not consumer friendly in those days. And even into the 2000s, they built, in my opinion, negative goodwill and disloyalty, which is still imbued into the Microsoft brand, but to different degrees, depending in when you were born and when you started to acknowledge that Microsoft existed. In contrast, if you look at Apple and Steve Jobs, right, compared to Bill Gates, let's set Sony and Nintendo aside for a minute, but this is like two guys that were pretty much a similar age, entering into technology advancements and software advancements. Steve built his vision on taking sort of available tech and making advancements in how people interacted and consumed music. It was the iPod was first, right? Music, personal communication, and entertainment. Consumers then, if you look at it, gravitated kind of towards his creativity and his philosophy and his products, and they were good products, right? All the facets that he sort of put forward went on to build a stronger Apple brand in an organic way that was admired, respected, and it created a generation of loyalty, right? And this is Sony's and Nintendo's philosophy in terms of how they do things. Now, I know that what the answer is going to be back to that, right? It's going to be, well, Xbox 360 is like basically like kind of the anomaly, right? In all of this, but a lot of goodwill was wiped out from the Xbox 360, because I think they both sold a similar quantity, right? Even though PlayStation came out a year later, $200 more expensive, they both sold around 80 million. Now, the goodwill for Xbox One didn't go away completely, because they still sold 50 million units, right? And Sony's only at 112, but Xbox One in 2013, there was somebody in the chat I want to credit that raised this thing, right? They said after 2013, the negativity started. They're absolutely right. The DRM, no trade-in, forced device, always online initiative. And if that doesn't suit you, go and buy an Xbox 360, right? And correct me if I'm wrong in any of these, because my memory is not as good as it used to.
No, that's spot on.
But if you look at the roots and the DNA that were laid down by Bill Gates, they all came back to fruition. They all came back racing to the top of the surface for everyone to remember what Microsoft has always been about, right? It kind of wiped that for me and for many others that I speak to, right? You cannot say Sony won this generation or that generation back then just because of price and power. Since Xbox sold 50 million units, I believe that they did one of the two things that they needed to do. One was drop the console price, but they didn't do the other, which was make games. And it was a profound mistake, which I think has compounded the brand for Microsoft in a negative way for years after 2013 up until this point. Microsoft always have a propensity to kind of buy companies, and I think there's about 124 of them that they bought, right? And cut bait if something doesn't give them the market share or the potential in market leadership. And I think in the years that we didn't see gains, I think they were considering, do we cut bait and run, or do we persevere and carry on going forward? And obviously now with the Xbox Series X, we know which way they're going forward, right? Their overarching corporate strategy of subscriptions for a fee is basically being imbued into the Xbox Series X and S strategy with Game Pass. Now, the other thing I would say is that, and this is off the cuff slightly, but it'll kind of give you a sense of how I see Microsoft. Not many can hold my attention like Miyamoto or Cory Barlog, even if the subject matter is something as mundane as aubergines. No offense to aubergines, obviously. Steve Jobs would also mesmerize people in an auditorium. Does Microsoft do that for you, right? Or does the lurking sinistrism of the Gates legacy still lurk behind, the new apparent sincerity and consumer-friendly on show right now with the Xbox Series S and the Series X and the way that they're trying to position it? For many in Europe and Asia, on a conscious or a subconscious level, Xbox are still kind of seemingly to a generation like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
No, I completely agree. I mean, wow. It's an interesting point, the bad sort of blood or bad taste left in people's mouths from Microsoft from the decades gone past. And it's an interesting point because I guess there's a generation of gamers that do remember that all the way back from 95 and the hyper aggression that was surrounding Microsoft at the time. But as Puxley said, probably newer generations in the playground, it came down to numbers and, my dad's bigger than your dad kind of conversations, almost literally. I mean, Pux, how do you think the 2013 reveal of the Xbox One and the arrogance of Microsoft at the time damaged them? Because I know, like VJ said, the numbers, I know the 360 got off to a good head start and it was ahead for most of the generation. I think the PS3 caught up by the end. And like I said, we saw at the end of the PS2 era that Sony were kind of arrogant, go and get a second job if you can't afford a PS3 type comments. And we saw Microsoft do it in 2013 is, we've got a product for people that aren't online. It's called the 360 and just the sheer arrogance of it and stuff. What's the ongoing kind of fallout for that on this current generation, do you think, after their debacle in 2013?
That's a good question. So, I mean, for me, when it comes to E3s and all the rest of it, I've always loved the Nintendo shows. That goes without saying because I'm a big fan. But between Microsoft and Sony, I've always preferred the Xbox show to the PlayStation. I don't know why. There was just something about the kind of presentation and the showcase that Microsoft gave during E3s and have done during E3s, which always drew me in more than the PlayStation ones. However, I do remember 2013 watching, or 2012, whenever the initial console reveal was, when it was revealed that, the system's always online, has, was it the DVR video link catch up so you could do your set-top box based controls through your console and all this stuff. And I do remember watching that and thinking, especially as the 360 turned me into an Xbox gamer back in 2006. So by this point, I had this massive love and respect for the world of Xbox and all the new games which were to come in the future. Yet when I saw that, I don't know, my heart kind of sank in a way. But the always online aspect of things. I mean, I think especially in 2013. I mean, online was a bigger thing. It was still growing, but I still don't remember broadband and high internet speed connections in people's homes being as widespread as they are now. So there's a lot of massive concern, at least for me, living back with my parents back then, that, oh God, if I was to get this machine, am I going to have any issues with my line being able to play games and stay on?
Yeah.
But then watching the Sony one with the PlayStation 4 and them effectively rubbing it in their face. I mean, I still remember the video because there was a massive conversation around, well, hold on a minute, what if I buy a game and then I trade it in? Can somebody else not, buy that? And there was originally this weird kind of complicated process as to how you would have to, return games or buy secondhand or the rest of it. And then Sony with the PlayStation 4 obviously took them to the cleaners of that one. Just, hey, look, this is how you share a game. Just giving the guy a box. Hey, thanks.
I think that little 30-second video they put together on the fly actually won the generation in my eyes, to be honest.
I mean, if I'm honest, for me, that I got a PS4. I did not buy an Xbox One in the end because it was those kind of reasons as to why I didn't do it. And I do wonder if, I think a lot of people, you see it a lot on the internet today about people who will not do things or not buy certain things not just because of the product, but on the principles of the company behind it as well, and the views of the company. And I think that's more true now than ever. And I'd like to think that, especially in 2013, that's also what stopped a load of people buying an Xbox One, because as the other rest of the panel has already said, that that Microsoft have had a really aggressive marketing strategy for years, trying to push Windows to be the platform for the world, and I suppose to some degree they've kind of done that. But in the console space, I don't think that is not the right mindset. I don't think you shouldn't win people over by pure aggression. You should want the players to come to you, not the other way around. And again, thanks for the 2013 reveal. I think that's what pushed a lot of people away to PlayStation. And I think a lot of people are now seeing the power of PlayStation, who didn't have one before, perhaps, are probably now going to be the target to try and win back over to a Series X as opposed to a PS5. And I think that's going to be a very tough battle for Microsoft.
Well, that neatly brings me on to my next point for Mr. Tushi, actually, is that, Microsoft hold the power narrative this time. They've made a few sort of missteps along the way up until this point. I think Sony have been very quiet, possibly waiting for Microsoft to kind of make a mistake. And I think Microsoft may have made a couple. There was a comment a little further up, actually, that sort of Microsoft don't learn from their mistakes. And I think, after the May showcase, and they said, actually, perhaps we set expectations too high, and we've learned from that, we won't do it. It kind of felt like they did that a little bit again with the July showcase and the sort of Halo reveal and stuff. Do you think Microsoft are doing enough in this sort of new upcoming generation, Mr. T, to sort of slowly start turning the tides of people's opinions against Microsoft? Will they be pulling in more PlayStation fans this generation than the current one?
Personally, I think that the Xbox marketing team needs a kick up the arse.
Agreed.
Right back in December when they announced the trailer in Hellblade, oh my God, all you heard was Xbox all day long. And everyone was hyped for the Xbox. Then everything just dwindled down, though. Everyone was bashing PlayStation because there was nothing getting announced, and it was like a 6-month wait for theirs. But with the July event, it's not the July event, the May event, I absolutely love that because there was so many new games, new IPs and stuff, which I'd never played before, and I'm really excited for all of them. Even still now, I can't wait for them. With the July event, I really enjoyed that one. I even enjoyed the Halo reveal. I even liked the way it looked. I didn't really see a pop. I didn't see any pop-ins when I was actually watching it. It was only later on when people have ripped the videos apart to actually see them. But I do think since July they've been absolute dry, and they need to announce something, even at least once a month or something, at least every couple of weeks or so. Just announce something, just to keep the momentum going. Because at the moment, everyone's just getting pissed off. I think it's a bit. I can't get my words out again now. I think the problem is it's different because everyone's used to having the E3 and having all the announcements all at once, but we're just getting drip fed these, and I can't stand it. I'd rather have an E3 and get everything done all in one day.
That's a very interesting point, and I don't know if you're aware of Archimedes' work. Boxenberger, he made a video about the differences between the hardware and the services marketing department for Microsoft and the games marketing department, and the huge disconnect between the two. And I think what you mentioned there, Mr. Tushi, was very valid, actually, because I think the hardware and the services came flying out the gates in December. I remember I was actually on my work's Christmas do, and I remember getting back to my room and I was half cut, to be honest, and I was looking on my phone to see what the time is, and there was a YouTube sort of notification. So I had a look, and it said about new Xbox. It's like, oh my god! So I looked at it, and it just blew me away. It absolutely blew me away, and I thought, wow! And they came out the gates absolutely flying. And it's all gone, like you say, it's all gone a little bit quiet since. And it's a shame because, like you say, I think that the hardware and the services marketing department have been absolutely brilliant. But what hasn't been keeping up the momentum, perhaps, is the game side of the marketing department. And I'm guessing I'm looking at Aaron Greenberg if I'm calling people out and things, people like that really need to up their game to keep the momentum and the excitement going. But to be honest, Mr. T, that brings us on nicely onto our next topic. But before we do, we're just going to pop back to Pux just to catch up with any chat that's going on.
Yeah. So. Actually, when you were just speaking, Phil, Fugly made a comment. So, to you almost directly, I guess. I honestly believe that Xbox executives, especially the marketing department, are all just incompetent, failing to deliver time to what they feed themselves to their fan base.
Yeah, that's a fair comment, but I would also argue that perhaps the marketing departments are actually split into different kinds of departments. And like I say, Archimedes made the distinction between the hardware and services, because I think it was in February, they invited Austin Evans and Digital Foundry, and we got to see the inside of the Xbox Series X. And since the Xbox One X, Microsoft have been very good at showing us the inside of these boxes, showing us the system of a chip and the insides, basically, and it really gets fans excited and stuff. But I personally would probably specifically blame the games marketing department. But I take your point, Fugly. Like I say, I do agree that there is some incompetencies going on, and I'm not convinced they do actually learn from their mistakes, in all honesty. It is frustrating as an Xbox gamer.
To add to that quickly, as we're on it, because I remember seeing something online, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, but it was talking about the revenue streams for Sony. I can't remember the specific numbers or anything like that, but one thing I do remember seeing is that for Sony, I believe that the PlayStation and the gaming division is now the what's the right wording for this? Is the highest revenue. That's the term, most profitable for Sony. That's what I'm looking for. Whereas I don't know what the numbers or figures are for Microsoft, but I think Xbox, or from Microsoft's perspective, I think Xbox, or they've been trying to turn Xbox not just from a console anymore, but they're trying to turn it into a brand and a service in itself, almost in alignment with the rest of the Microsoft product line. Of course, you've got Windows, but things like Microsoft Office, that kind of went from being a box you'd buy in a shop to, a service subscription that you pay a monthly fee for. And obviously Xbox has now gone into that same bracket. Do we reckon, not to keep on the topic for too much longer, but knowing that, gaming is the biggest profit share for Sony, and we're obviously seeing that they're doing their marketing quite well, do we reckon that there may be a marketing kind of mismatch between Microsoft trying to maybe sell the gaming division of Xbox, but then also maybe trying to nicely fit that in with every other service that they're trying to also deliver in this kind of rebranding they're trying to do, I guess?
It's a good question. Let's go to VJ with that one very quickly. VJ, what do you think?
I'm just trying to grasp the question. Sorry, would you mind just rephrasing that a little bit for me? Do
you think from Microsoft's marketing perspective they're spread a bit too thin? Is that what you're saying, Pux?
Effectively, yeah.
Between all of their services and games and hardware and stuff, are they spread a little thin?
I think it's an incredibly poor excuse if that's the answer. Given the resources that they have at hand, given nearly 25 years that they've been, including all the R&D up until the first Xbox launch, not knowing how to play this game, if that's the answer, I'm sure you'd find if you were sitting in the Xbox exec team, you'd find yourself being dumped out of the office building.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like you said before, Sony are very cutthroat when it comes to their executives, and let's not necessarily call it mistakes, but underperformance perhaps. And like you said, they're very cutthroat. Whereas Microsoft are a little bit more relaxed, not a family business, but sort of less cutthroat. And perhaps that's to their, detriment. Be honest, because like you say, there's nothing wrong with some fresh blood coming in and not constantly looking over your shoulder to make sure you're doing the best that you possibly can.
I think it's hit on something there, Phlapp, because if you look at the competition in comparison, right, and we may have touched on this before, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, sir. It does look like when I see Phil, and I've said this numerous times, that he needs to be much more creatively ruthless. And it really does look like it's jobs for the boys. And it's just like, if you look at these guys, I mean, look, if you're a footballer, you have your peak performance, right, between 20 and say 31, right? Some of these guys have been there for 20 years, right? Come up all through different sort of job specs and different departments, and now have made it onto the exec team of Xbox. If you look at Sony, right, in the year that Death Stranding and Days Gone, which were under Yoshida's lookout, right, and if you look at the PlayStation performance in terms of hardware sales, not software, because there's a big chasm there, and versus from PlayStation 4 in the US versus Xbox One, they're pretty close. And so what did Sony do? Sony said, right, Sean, you were given all the games, all the resources. You didn't get us to where we needed to get to. Why we just slightly above parity on Xbox in terms of install base. And Yoshida, these are two massive games, right, that you're the head of the studios that didn't perform. What did they do? They took those two out and replaced them with Herman Hulst, who knows how to pitch a product to Sony, knows how to work on a tight budget. Because I think the first Horizon Zero Dawn was only 35 or 40 million euros, right, in the documentary, and they were hesitant to even pitch it, right. So he knows, he's gone through I don't know what you call it, through for the rough and tumble, right, to know how to get to where he is now, right. He hasn't just been appointed there straight out of college. And then you've got Jim Ryan, who's totally battered Microsoft in Europe, and said, right, your job here, what you've done in Europe, we want you to do the same now in North America. Herman, you know what it takes to build a studio, how to build franchises, how to build new IP, and you know what it takes to deliver a game on time and relatively on budget. Right now, we want to make sure that our US studios make sure they do that as well, because some of the US studios, I'm not talking about Insomniac here or anything like that, or Santa Monica, but some of the studios do take a little bit extra time and also do go a bit more over budget than they should, right? And it's not a bad thing, because he knows, just with Horizon Zero Dawn, he's proved that he knows the balance in terms of development time, quality, and budget, and how to make sure that trifecta stays in balance in order to deliver a hardware-selling, system-selling game, not necessarily like making huge profits, because there's only really 10 games that make huge amounts of profit. So in that sense, there's the contrast, I think, in terms of Xbox management and PlayStation management.
No, I completely agree. And if you don't mind, I'll have the final say on this one, just to kind of round up perhaps. But I completely agree, because I think it seems to me like Microsoft get lost in their own sort of hype bubble a little bit. And we've mentioned this on the show before, and perhaps is why, the May showcase and the July showcase, the hype didn't necessarily live up to what we actually saw on the screen. And fair play to Mr. T. It absolutely did for some people. That's fine, but obviously, I guess if you're sitting on the fence thinking, what console do I buy next time? And there is that sort of disconnect between hype and what you're seeing on the screen. It just makes me wonder if, Microsoft execs do live in a little Microsoft bubble and don't quite actually understand what it is as we as gamers and more specifically as Xbox fans want and need out of them. It's a bit of a shame, but I'm coming to you next, Mr. T, on our second topic. But before I do, I'd just like to thank the chat. You guys are awesome. I've always envisaged that you guys would be the sort of the last panel member on the show, because it's for you. And I really appreciate all your comments. And you come back at us with some stuff that we don't think of, and we can comment on it. So, you know, you guys, you've been around since the beginning. You are the bedrock of this channel. We've got up to nearly 80 subs this week. We started the week at about 46, and I think we're going to end the week on about 80. So, you know, that's for us personally. I know it's a tiny drop in the ocean compared to some channels out there, but it's a massive step for us, and I'm really grateful for you guys being on board and being part of this. You really do, you know, make the difference for this channel. So I appreciate that. Mr. T, you alluded to it yourself. Where the hell's Microsoft been since July? And in all fairness, you could extend that question to PlayStation as well to a certain degree, but at least we have seen things like the Ratchet and Clank demo actually running on PS5 hardware, and they've obviously got the marketing rights to Call of Duty, and we actually saw that game running on PS5 hardware. I mean, we haven't really even had that from Microsoft in any way. What is this quietness about? Is there a sort of a Microsoft plan behind all of this? Are they winging it, or is there a plan in place? What do you think?
Personally, it's strange that they're stupidly quiet. It's the only way I can think of putting it is that they're just going to keep it quiet, then just do one big bang at the end just before because it feels like we're going to pre-order it and the console's going to come the week after. That's what it feels like was going to happen.
It does.
But,
yeah, it does.
I think both of them are as bad as each other at the moment. They're all too quiet. But Sony seems to be like, they was really quiet at the start of the year, but now they've kind of kept up and took over at the moment because they've been releasing quite a few stuff online. And there's some stuff that interests me on the PlayStation, but on the Xbox, I just wish they'd show a bit more, but we'll only find out when maybe this Tokyo event, but it says no next gen hype, doesn't it? No next gen news, did it say?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, so there was kind of an itinerary, wasn't there, of what it, you know, will and won't be showing. And unfortunately, like you say, it did say no new next generation news or something along those lines, didn't it?
Maybe that's to stop you building hype. Maybe.
Or perhaps, because I think that's set for the 24th, perhaps we'll have the blowout of information before then. But I guess my beef is that, you know, with PlayStation 5, we pretty much know, we know lots about it. We know what it looks like. We know that there's two SKUs coming, X, Y, and Z. You know, the things that we don't know is price, release date, pre-order date, and some of the sort of intricacies about how the PlayStation 4 side of things will work with PS5. But for Microsoft, they've got an entire console to launch yet with all of the information that goes with that, on top of trying to get Series X off the ground with the same information Sony still need to deliver, like price, release date, and things like that. Do you think Microsoft are going to do this in one flash to bang, or are they going to, you know, sort of drag this out until the launch of these things?
I'm hoping they probably near the mid to end of September, they're just going to go with one big bang. They need to announce the Xbox Series S on the same, needs to launch on the same day as the X. There's no point releasing it later on. They need to get that low price point in right at the start. But I'm hoping they just do one big show. I'm hoping it isn't drip fed to the start of the generation.
But do you think that's going to be too much information for the average? And you know, I'm talking about the average consumer to take in one go, because, like I say, it's not just going to be Series S; it's going to be all of the Series X news as well. I mean, do you think this will be delivered in one big package and say, you know, we've got a cheap option and an expensive option, or it just makes me wonder if it's too much information for the average consumer to sort of take in? Perhaps I'm being unfair to the average consumer because, you know, I can't instantly put myself in their shoes because I'm obviously an enthusiast and I want to get a Series X day one. But, you know, for parents that aren't into game and that want to buy stuff for their children, is this just too much information to handle in one go, do you think, or not? Or does this come down to the retail?
I think that they should be able to get it all out in one at least 1 hour show. Just sit down and tell them what the X does, what the S does, and what the Xbox One S and X and so on. How long they're going to support them for. We know most of the stuff already. It's just they just need to have have like a good, like, for example, like they've been advertising xCloud quite a lot lately, haven't they? Where they So I was struggling to get my words out here.
No, that's a good question. That's coming in September, isn't it? The xCloud thing.
Yeah, in about 10 days, 9 days, is it? Yeah,
I
9
can't remember the
days.
date. Yeah, what was the
15th,
date?
Yeah,
I think.
15th, I believe. Yeah, about
nice.
9 days time. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem to be pushing that well, and everyone seems to understand it all. I think it'll only take one show, and everyone will keep rewatching the stuff, won't they? Like they do. Like how many times have people watched that Hellblade trailer when he got first airs?
Yeah, I've watched it a million times. If
Exactly, yeah,
if that video
same
on
here.
YouTube's got a million hits, a million of those are mine, because that was the one game that really got me excited, to be honest. And personally, that's one game that I was so disappointed to not see at the July showcase. Really disappointed to not see that there, or just a little bit more of it, to be honest. Puxley, I mean, what do you think this gap is? What is this gap in knowledge or gap in information? Sorry, is this a strategy, or are they just are they seeing what Sony does? Is this a game of cat and mouse? Where do you think Microsoft are with this?
I really don't know now. I mean, we all thought that we'd have some information by now. I mean, I know when we had I think one of our mid-August shows, I speculated that I don't think we should get news any later than the kind of first quarter of September. And I think I just saw something in someone in the comments mentioned about, we've already gone through the past quarter almost of September already, and we still have nothing left. Yes, it was. Or he does mention about Nintendo as well, which, I mean, we did get the Nintendo Super Mario 35th anniversary direct, which had a load of good news, which I think almost completes the Nintendo side of things for the holiday season. But yeah, I mean, I'd just like to read a comment actually from Fun Speculation as well. Thanks for tuning in. So they said, we should have to know more before then. Would be too long of layoff without game news. Hype is being lost and worry is increasing. The longer the wait, the more they will have to wow fans and be cheaper to generate average consumer excitement. And I'm definitely on board with the longer that we're going on without news, the more you're going to have to wow fans, because I'm very much becoming on this fence as well, personally, especially because I know that I get my current Xbox experience on my PC, and a lot of the games I'm looking forward to from Microsoft and Xbox are coming to Game Pass on PC as well. So I'm having less of a good reason to get a Series X, and I might as well just stick with my PC. And obviously, from Microsoft's perspective, that's not a good thing. They want people buying these units. I mean, and even from the PlayStation side, I mean, as you've said before, we've seen a lot of games, especially like Ratchet and Clank and a number of others, which have we've seen gameplay with, this has been captured on the console, and you think, Christ, this looks great. I mean, I love the Ratchet and Clank footage. I thought it looked phenomenal, and I'm a big fan of the games anyway. But then that's kind of really the only real game that I would look forward to currently on the PS5. And Ratchet and Clank on its own is not enough for me to spend £500 on a console either. So I think we need some as soon as possible. I mean, I know the world has been turned upside down basically for the large majority of 2020. And we've kind of been drip-fed news. I mean, I know we've also got a Ubisoft live stream, I believe, this coming Thursday. But again, I think this drip feed of news is, again, it's too slow now. We need to have this big bang of information as soon as to drum up this massive portion of excitement, because November's rolling around. This is when they're coming out, and we don't really know much. I mean, yeah, we've seen games. We don't really know an awful lot more about them, do we? Really?
No, I completely agree. I have lots of unanswered questions, and if someone had a gun at my head, I probably couldn't think of a single one now. But I'll try and write some things down that I still don't know about the Series X that I'd like to know. But I'm going to come to you next, VJ. No surprise, and Fun Speculation raises a really good point, actually, that. And we kind of touched on it earlier that, the marketing department, whichever part of the marketing department, and to be fair, I don't know if they are separated into hardware, services and gaming, but it does feel like that. But, the marketing department have really lost the momentum that they gained in December, really. Like I said, they come flying out the stalls in December. I've never seen such an aggressive Microsoft, and it must have really shaken Sony to think, bloody hell, they've gone that early. And I think that really rattled Sony, if I'm honest. And unfortunately, you know, they've just been coasting, and they're just slowing down each month because, you know, we're supposed to have had an Xbox 2020 every month. I think that was announced in June. We were supposed to have an update every month up until launch. Even that's been cancelled. So why are they losing this momentum, VJ? What's going on? Is there a business strategy here?
No, I think you're hitting on quite a few different points. I'm trying to summarize your questions into one answer.
Well, no, you can tackle them individually if you can remember what I've said.
No, I think I don't think we've got the time for that. But I'll try and then just let me know. So I'll just tell you. I'll just say what comes to mind, and whether it's right or wrong, you can just just cut me off. I think with what you've said, it's an excellent point. Like, Microsoft came out of the gates, they said they were going to be consistent. They laid out the foundation, which everybody said, this is absolutely rock solid. And this is the first time that a launch of any console has been this transparent. And we thought they'd learnt their lesson from the past and actually listened to the community, right? And someone in the chat, again, just got my brain whirring with a comment that's actually sent me off on a tangent on this. So blame them. So they're going to do all of that. I think Xbox, I think it's pretty obvious that they've got troubles to resolve, and staying quiet, in my opinion, is the best possible thing that they can do, because every time they open their mouth, nothing really good's been happening since the unveiling of the system itself. So by staying quiet, and I'm speaking about Aaron Greenberg specifically, at least one can avoid sticking one's foot in one's mouth, so to speak. But what this does, of all of this talk, and I know it's a strange thing, it's you guys know the fable of the tortoise and the hare, right? Because that's what comes to mind. The hare's like super confident of winning.
I was going to say, who's who? That's the question.
I'm going to come to that. I'm going to come to that. So be patient. Okay. So yeah, stick your straw in your milk bottle and all that. And the hare's really confident of winning, so it stops during the race and falls asleep. The tortoise continues to move very, very slowly, but without stopping, and it finally wins the race. The moral lesson of the story is that you can be more successful by doing things slowly and steadily than by acting rashly or quickly and carelessly. For clarification, just in case for those of you, Sony is the tortoise, as in they've like kind of had a plan with consistent beats and slowly trickled information out with no hard promises, no arrogance, and they're easily winning the race, giving no mind share to what Xbox is doing. Were we not doubting in the early part of the year, right? I don't know the exact date, so please forgive me. With Sony were being doubted and ridiculed down to being really slow, really quiet, people even doubting the console existed, or that they were having problems getting the heating system to work correctly. You guys remember all this, right?
Oh yeah.
And let alone any games even being ready for the system. And Microsoft were being praised from the rooftops for presenting a console teardown, the transparency. I've covered all of that now. So Xbox, being the hare, in my opinion, has been overconfident whilst not keeping an eye even on something on their front doorstep in terms of Halo, and have stumbled. And it now has to stumbled profoundly, I should say. It now has to pick itself up and get back in the race. So in my opinion, instead of trying to sort of promote themselves like right across the board and cover every aspect of gaming in a really complete broad sense, what they need to be doing is spending money now in terms of adding content to Game Pass and building Game Pass into what really sets their hardware aside from everybody else. So I'm going to wrap up my point here, so just in case you're worried.
No, that's fine. You can go for it.
On the bright side, right, it's a matter of days or weeks before someone says something. We know that, right? Maybe both companies are building up tension as a product of neither one wanting to go first, or it's just the times that we're in, and they both really completely understand that waiting till the last possible moment and the most opportunistic moment, given that they won't have enough consoles to satisfy demand. I know we talk about casual gamers and this, that, but let's be honest, the first 10, 15 minutes units that sell, majority of these going to go to hardcore fans that are going to evangelize about the system. So going into next gen, depending on how many systems Xbox have got and has Sony have got, I think that's key, because then it does to a degree become about numbers in terms of how the evangelism and how the narrative goes forward, right? Aside from the games, but so they may be waiting for the last possible moment to maximize the mind share, right? And as you were saying, and make it sure that it's an instant purchase. In terms of like what they need to do, and I'm with Mr. Tushi here 100%, is that they still have the Xbox Series S to reveal. And I think I said this last week on another podcast. I think they need to tie up all the loose ends surrounding Xbox Series X. They should, in kind of one fell swoop, clearly communicate both consoles, all the options to consumers, put stuff up on their blogs, on Twitter, make sure it's consistent. And because by doing so, it eradicates all the doubt, and it also, going forward, avoids any confusion. Just as and I'm not familiar with Apple, but just as Apple do when they announce an iPhone 11 and an iPhone 11 Pro, and there's a price disparity, and there's a tech disparity, or there's a processor disparity, or there's a specification disparity, but at least people know and they're well informed before they press the button, right, in terms of acquiring said console.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. And I'm going to go to Mr. Tushi with this point as well, because...
Blame him.
I blame him. Now, it is about the damage and where the damage sits, because I'm guessing virtually everyone on this panel, everyone listening, is probably an Xbox Series X day one. So actually, this isn't damaging us, is it? This isn't damaging us. We're bought into the ecosystem. We love the brand. We're as frustrated as hell, and I'm so thankful to Fugly, Wakanda Fun Speculation, Sweshi, all of the chat, because I'm sensing your frustration, and us on the panel, we share exactly the same frustration, and we are pointing fingers at executives and individuals, and I've done it myself tonight. Fugly, who is this damaging the most then? Because if it's not damaging us and it's not damaging the people in the chat, is this the casual gamers? Where's the damage coming from in this? Is this damaging people in retail? Is this damaging the sort of the image of the brand even? Oh, you there, Mr. T?
Oh, sorry. Say that again, sorry.
Who is this particularly damaging? This silence, is this, because like I say, we're all going to buy Xbox Series X day one. Who is this damaging? Is it damaging the brand? Is it the casual gamers? Is it the people that are on the fence about which console to buy?
I just think it's damaging the main thing. What the main thing it affects really is just mainly the console war. Everyone's just using, because everyone's got lack of info on anything. They just use it against each other, making everyone else, making each console negative. I don't think they're damaging themselves. I've said openly on Twitter that it wouldn't bother me if every single game was delayed and they just brought a console out. I'd still be happy, because I know I can play all my games. I've got a massive backlog, and I've got enough to keep it going for years. No joke.
No, that's an interesting point. But do you think there's an element of the PlayStation 5 current owner or PlayStation 4 current owners that are kind of on the fence and waiting to see which way this goes? Because obviously, I think the power narrative from Microsoft has got everyone really excited, and strangely enough, I think Nvidia has possibly helped Microsoft's case to a certain degree with the launch of the 30 series RTX cards, because obviously, okay, they're not as powerful as the next generation consoles aren't as powerful as an RTX 3090, but obviously they cost a third of the price probably. So they have got lots of people bought in, but do you think there's a large percentage of PlayStation owners out there that will actually consider jumping ship, and that this particular silence from Microsoft at the moment is actually damaging that particular group of people?
Right. What I think is going to happen this gen, which is going to be different from the last and the previous one, is the way I see every Xbox owner I speak to personally and on the internet, they always own a PlayStation and a Switch or PC. But on PlayStation, it seems to be just PlayStation only. I just think that Microsoft's going to get their arse into gear with a lot more content and stuff. I just think the PlayStation owners are not going to jump ship. I just think they're going to actually buy both consoles. I think there's going to be more of the multi-console owners next gen.
Can I just dovetail into?
That's what I personally think.
Can I just dovetail into what
you go for
it? I think he's absolutely right. There's two things that he's hit on there. Is dual console ownership I think is paramount, because I think any PlayStation player or any PlayStation console owner that says I'm not interested in Xbox is not entirely truthful, because what I have to praise Microsoft is this all access program, where it's unprecedented and it's a really smart and sensible move. It's like a gateway drug and a very easy way to have dual console ownership. Buying a 4 or 5, however much it's going to be, because if you buy an Xbox through All Access, you're paying a premium of about $120 to up to $200, which is fine, because over 2 years, you say you're paying $600 for the Xbox One X, because we don't know the price for the new system. So let's go with One X. You're paying $600, right? You get Game Pass Ultimate, not just Game Pass. You get Game Pass Ultimate for 2 years, which is conceivably $360 in value. So you could have at any point picked up an Xbox One X for $240 effectively. And I think that if they are definitely going to roll this out into 20 more countries, and they're going to, keep the price reasonable, I think, given that the social and economic conditions that a lot of families that I've spoken to that find themselves in, one, they don't know about it, and number two, they are PlayStation families that are thinking, okay, what can we afford because Christmas is coming up for our kids, right? And then, so that's one aspect of it. I won't go into it too much. And then the other aspect of it is, I don't think that the power narrative was one of the first times it ever came to light in a profound way in 2013 with Xbox and PS and PS4. I don't think that important this time round. I think this harkens back to 20 years ago, and this is when Mr. Tushi made a point that, look, I've got a backlog on my current systems that I can't get through. Right, fair enough. But remember, it's all down to games. And this is why I said they need to make an investment into Game Pass of acquiring content if they find that they have gaps if Microsoft find they have gaps in their roadmap. Just recollect, as an example, Game Boy was out there, black and white system. It went up against the PC Engine, the Neo Geo Pocket, the Game Gear, the Atari Lynx. It beat all of those guys into the ground, into submission, because it had content.
It's an interesting point, and obviously Microsoft with their game studios are trying to turn that around, and that actually brings us nicely onto the third topic, actually. But we'll go back to Pux first. We haven't heard from Pux for a little while. Is there anything happening in the chat, Pux? What we got going on? Lots of frustration.
I thought you'd gone off back to Cornwall.
Yeah, so there's a few things. Well, one thing I've seen in particular, because a lot of the topics we've covered so far are, are Xbox or Microsoft and Sony damaging their own brands, because we've not heard much about the console. But I've seen an interesting comment from Fugly here. So they says, me, for example, I do not own any games console since I play on PC. I recently got Game Pass for PC and I am hungry for more. I want news reveals and, of course, gameplay, yet they are silent, which frustrates me. And this, as I've said before, I get my Xbox experience through PC. I do have a PS4, but that gets the least love in my home, for perfectly honest. I'm very much a PC and a Switch gamer. So as much as I think, the lack of news and stuff on the systems front is annoying and does it damage the brand, I'm not sure, because, this is almost off of what we said on the first topic, but I like to think that for the most part, no matter what... how much the companies try to big up each of their systems and say how great they are. I've got, this many teraflops and all the numbers game. As gamers, the large majority of people, we just want to know what games we get to play, what new IPs are there, what recurring sequels are we going to play. And I think it's that information. I'd like to think that that's what the large majority of us really want to know. We want to know what kind of things we can enjoy. I know we got the July showcase, and we finally got the kind of open secret reveal of things like Fable, which is something good to look forward to. And then during the Sony showcase in end of June, we of course got a few extras that they're like Deathloop, Ratchet and Clank, and Ghostwire, I think it was. But for me, that's not enough to sell either console to me. I need to know a lot more about what games are coming, and I need to try and quickly go find it again. Yeah, so I saw a comment from Stubbs Gaming as well. Thanks, Stubbs. Which is most gamers. For most gamers, power doesn't matter. And I'd also like to think that's also true as well, because I am quite a heavy Nintendo Switch gamer as well. I very much love my Legend of Zelda and Super Mario experiences, as well as a lot of other stuff. And obviously, that's the weakest of the lot, right? Especially as a handheld unit. So I think what we just need to know, not just what new games are coming outside of what we've already seen, but like release dates would be nice. I mean, I know it's kind of a bit of a reach given obviously the world situation, but I do think sooner rather than later, that's the kind of information I think most people want to see, not just wanting to hear numbers games from the hardware anymore.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's an interesting point because, we always talk about Xbox as if it's just a console, but of course, we have to kind of expand our minds a little bit now with regards Game Pass and xCloud, and obviously the PC gamers out there as well. So, when I'm talking Xbox, in my head, I'm talking console, but of course, it's a much bigger brand than that now. Really appreciate your comments on this, gents. It's been an interesting one, this. And like I say, I knew it was going to be a little bit fiery and get some sort of frustration out of people because, we're on the receiving end of this and we're all gamers. We're all desperate to know what's going to happen. And I think the one thing that frustrates me the most about Microsoft, and I've been banging this drum for a little while now, is that just the lack of gameplay that we've seen. I need, and I'm a little bit like you, Pucks. I mean, I'm going to buy an Xbox Series X day one. That's probably a given. But I still want to see a game running on it that blows me away and think that is what I'm going to get on day one when it arrives on my doorstep and I plug it in for the first time. I'm going to see these visuals, and we still haven't had that yet. And we're a couple of months out from launch, and I don't remember it ever being this late before in a console launch, and that's the one thing I'm really frustrated about at the moment. Okay, well, we're going to move on to our last topic. Really pleased with the chat. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been great chat. Like I say, we're getting the emotion come through, which I kind of knew was going to happen. And I'm going to go to you, Mr. Tushi, actually. Just a bit of a closing topic. So out of the July showcase and everything that you've seen since, what is it you're most excited for game-wise out of Microsoft first-party studios?
Oh, it's a tough one.
It is.
The thing I was mostly excited for was Halo. I love that it was open world. When literally you just press pause and open the map, there was upgrades there. It was such a new way of the game. The game has been built. The game was designed, and I admit the graphics did look a bit not funny, but they looked a different art style to what Halo 4 and 5 were. But I think because they were trying to go back to the days of Combat Evolved, weren't they? Trying to get that feel and the nostalgia feel of the classic games.
Yeah.
But some more have been really interesting. Was definitely forgot the freaking name of it now.
Describe it to us. I'm sure we can come up with it between us.
State of Decay 3.
Oh, that one.
I enjoyed that one. That one's got me interested. The one game I really, really want, I'm absolutely desperate for it. I really want another Perfect Dark. And I've said this for ages. I really, really want one. And to hear that the initiative is working on something that relies on gadgets and it's all sci-fi stuff like that. Also heard recently that it's possibly in the Perfect Dark world. Was it? Did they say?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go to VJ next because I think he's got a few bits to say on that. But yeah, I was never actually a Perfect Dark fan, to be honest. I came to it quite late, and unfortunately, I think more modern games have kind of spoilt the Perfect Dark kind of story for me a little bit because when I can't play the game with rose-tinted spectacles, in all honesty, and the controls for me feel a little janky, and I have to appreciate that it's obviously an older title and was one of the very early ones on the 360, I believe, and obviously was it on the N64 before that?
Yeah, I was a fan of on the N64. It was officially my first pre-order I ever done.
Oh wow!
I was 16 when it came out, and I actually managed to get in the shop and buy it because it was an 18, wasn't it?
Oh wow, excellent! Oh, that's a little claim to fame. That's cool. So you've kind of been around since the beginning then, and the story, and that's kind of why you're excited for the upcoming title.
Because, but me and my friends, like all my friends had PlayStations, but I had an N64. But all my friends were always coming around mine. Was always playing 4-player split screen on GoldenEye. That's what we used to do every day. And when Perfect Dark came out, and then it had the old maps from the GoldenEye, and we actually, because it was a futuristic, there weren't much of that stuff about back then, was there really? And it was something completely different. I really hooked on the game, but I weren't that keen on Perfect Dark Zero. I didn't really think much of that one. I did complete it on the 360, but
you did. See, I feel like I've missed out on that on those games, to be honest, because, like I say, when I go back and play them, I can't play them with that sort of nostalgia in the back of my mind, unfortunately. So I kind of play them for what they are, and they probably haven't aged well, in all fairness.
I was playing Perfect Dark yesterday. I put a video on Twitter. It still feels good to play, but the controls are horrible, especially with the when you're trying to scope with the pistol and stuff. You're shooting all over the place. It's not the same. I think it's to do with the N64 controller, how that was designed. It was perfect back then.
Yeah, that's true. And I think I've always got a theory that I think Call of Duty spoil games like that as well, because I don't know. I mean, I play Call of Duty a hell of a lot, and I am just so used to those controls that my mind, that my muscle memory for that first-person shooter type game mechanics is so deeply entrenched in me that when I play even a modern game that doesn't conform to those sort of controls, it's really jarring, and I have to really stop and think and kind of relearn the game. But take you back to your further point. I mean, I started playing the Master Chief Remaster Collection, and when I was going through Combat Evolved again, and to see the Halo trailer in July, for all of its graphical flaws, the gameplay looked bloody brilliant, didn't it? Did you get a feel for, even when his sort of armor charges up and goes, it just took me straight back to those days. I loved it.
It gives you goosebumps on your arm when I was watching that trailer.
It just looked so fun to play, even from the trailer, didn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, VJ, let's come to you next then. So, well, let's give Halo let's make Halo a given for everyone, to be honest. Let's not kind of dwell on Halo, because I think everyone's excited for that. But what other game are you really excited for that you've either seen or haven't seen?
I'm a big Fable fan, and I know it's really far out, so I don't want to dwell on that. But
no, it still counts.
I kind of got a couple of things here. So with everything that's gone on with Xbox recently, Game Pass is obviously super critical, and I just think it's just it's not the finished article, but I think it's fantastic. I'm a big Gears of War fan. I love them, and sometimes I play them back to back. So they're just I kind of find Gears of War kind of like a fast-paced Resident Evil.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. It's just like with the shooting and then with the chainsawing, and it's just it just gives me those vibes. And the reason why I like Fable, because I had a really close friend that was a designer on the first one, and I like him, and I love the game, and it's set in England. Peter Molyneux, back from the Populous days, right? So it was, so it's like kind of being from England. So yeah, and I will caveat that I think that even though Halo's out of the picture for the launch this year, I still feel that Xbox have got something up their sleeve, whether it's an acquisition or a timed exclusive.
Okay.
But I mean, that's just really out there speculation, right? It's not really sort of like important, but I'm hoping that they have something good. And for me, in terms of Game Pass and the games that I love, and this is a bit strange, is like, we know that Final Fantasy VII, the exclusive period with Sony's going to expire pretty soon. And I think it's like April. And if Microsoft can stick that into Game Pass day one, that would be fantastic. And it's kind of still within, given these unprecedented times, it's still kind of like feasibly within the launch window. And I think that would be arguably fantastic. It kind of dovetails into also the fact that Dragon Quest is going to be out there this year.
Yeah.
In Game Pass. So that narrative of not having any Japanese RPGs is kind of squashed. And these are just I know that's a little thing, but if Microsoft is sitting there sensibly with a list of boxes to tick where they're weak, when they start ticking like 7 or 8 or 10 and start getting double figures, all of a sudden, as a whole proposition, it really, I think, favors positivity within the Xbox brand. I know this isn't, we're talking about Xbox and we're talking about its history. We're talking about what's wrong. It's only because we want them to hear our points of view, so they can get things right and make it a success, right? I don't want it to be a one-horse race with Sony. because they also got pretty arrogant after PlayStation 2, right? And they took a really severe gut punch with PlayStation 3. We won't go into that now. That can be a separate topic in the future and so on and so forth. But I mean, I love Final Fantasy 7. You know, back in 1997, I played the whole game in Japanese, in fact, and
Wow.
And I even I was trying so hard to get a golden chocobo. I remember scrawling all the Japanese, pausing the screen, scrawling the Japanese text and faxing it to a journalist friend that had moved from France over to England and asking him, listen, look, this is all to do with Knights of the Round summon. So just help me to breed a golden chocobo, please. You know, so that's the sort of things that I was up to back in the day. But yeah, and I think it's, for me, it's not just about first party. Game Pass is kind of like, that's my first party product, if that makes sense, right? And I just hope that they make some really decent additions to it. Maybe Mafia, and I know that this is rumored Mass Effect trilogy. Not everyone's saying it's happening, and we've heard, but we all know like how far rumors go, right? You wouldn't, So if they can do, because Mass Effect was another huge one for me on the Xbox 360. It was just out of the blue, something completely different, and just completely captured my imagination. And I played the whole trilogy back to back well, not back to back, at release and back to back on the 360. And if that's remastered and can come out on the Game Pass day one, I think that's just, for me, that's just as strong as Halo.
That would be awesome. And Phil did speculate that there's still something big to announce for Game Pass, didn't he?
Yeah,
So
favorites, yeah.
If it's that would be awesome. I mean, I loved the sort of the space sci-fi side of that and the story behind it. That was, I absolutely. That would be so cool to have that on day one. My God.
Absolutely. And there's a few indie games. I won't go into every single one, but and I mentioned this a little while back. Look, not everyone has got 12 hours to play for a story-driven game. Not everyone's got 50 hours to play for an open world game.
Good point.
It doesn't make you less of a gamer. And I think that with this indie game initiative, and I think it's fantastic with some of the titles that I've got coming out. But there's an expert out there, shout out to Indie Gamer, who's a much bigger expert than I am, that would be able to give a much sort of like a global picture of exactly what's happening, when it's happening, and what to look out for.
No, absolutely. We hope to have the Indie Gamer on very soon, actually. So I'm really excited for that show. And that will be our time to talk about indie games, actually. Puxley, so you're currently a PC gamer that plays Xbox games. What at the July showcase set you on fire?
So I've been looking at the chat. I've seen a lot of people say about Senua 2 or Hellblade 2. I've seen some Avowed, Fable, Forza Motorsport. And of course, we've heard some Perfect Dark here in the chat as well. And I'm surprised nobody has mentioned The Median, which is the kind of horror, psychological horror looking game. I'm really looking forward to this one. And that's coming to PC Game Pass as well. So I'm really hyped for that when that comes out. I think that's going to be quite a good experience. And outside of that, I'm also really looking forward to Everwild, which nobody has mentioned. I don't know why, but that's probably because we don't know much about it, to be fair. But, I mean, I was a massive Sea of Thieves fan. I jumped into Sea of Thieves, not at launch, but after the 1 year big anniversary update. So I kind of got it fresh from that point onwards. And I absolutely loved the game. I thought I hadn't played a game quite like it before, and I don't think many games like it really do exist. So I got really sucked into it, and I really enjoyed the sailing around, being with friends, going onto islands, taking on other pirates and all the rest of it. I just thought it was quite an open experience. And my hope is that Everwild is similar to that, but as we've seen in like a kind of fantasy woodland setting with elves and magical mythical beasts and all the rest of it. So I'm very much looking forward to that, and I really hope it lives up to this kind of fake expectation I've currently made up in my mind as to the type of game it will be. Because I do see it hopefully being like Sea of Thieves in that it's kind of open world like, and you kind of have a group of 1 to 4, and you can go off and do quests or the rest of it. So I hope they don't disappoint. But if that's not the type of game that it is, then I hope that it's still. I hope it still grabs me. I guess I should say.
Well, funny you should say the ones that you're surprised people haven't mentioned. And actually, I'm just going to make a shout out to Pixel Witcher because he's coming a bit late. And I think most people in the chat have actually mentioned. But Pixel, what first party game are you most excited for in the Xbox Series X or Xbox in general coming up in the next year or two. I'll be interested to know. But the ones that I'm really excited for are, well, I've got two actually. I'm going to cheat a little bit. We've got Avowed. I think we was all expecting that, wasn't we? We didn't know it was called Avowed, but we knew Obsidian were working on a sort of an Elder Scrolls sort of clone, and that looked really good. I am really excited for that. But the other one was Fable. The trailer for that, it excited me so much that I was so pleased that Playground Games were the developers making this, because they're obviously based in the UK, and I'm not trying to be biased towards the UK or anything, but I think in order to get that Fable humour, you'd need that kind of UK sort of amount of developers to actually kind of get that just strange toilet humour that we kind of have, really. And it was really nice to see, obviously, she got eaten by the frog and all of those sort of bits. But also, it's a brand new studio. There was a nod. We saw sort of Bowerstone, and it felt like Playground were actually really going to do it justice. Now, I'm guessing this is a few years off. Go on, VJ.
Just to dovetail, yeah, I mean, that studio, I think, is the best studio within Microsoft. Secondly, where the original Fable was made, I think it was in Gillingham. It was only an hour and a half away. And I think that when that studio was closed down, was it Big Blue Box? A lot of those developers either went to Cody's or to Playground Games back in the day. So they'll definitely have one or two at least people from the original game as well, which will help.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't just that the trailer was great. It's probably the best trailer that I have seen out of everything that's been revealed so far, even from Sony. And I think that what it showed me was the creative intent behind the game.
Exactly. That's exactly what I liked about it.
Completely got me excited. And a lot of people say, oh, but it's CG, it's this, it's that. Yeah, but it tells you, it gives you so many clues. It gives you such a vibe in terms of the visual design and the narrative design. And as long as they stick to the intent that they've displayed to us, I think they're onto a clear winner.
Absolutely agree. And like you say, that's a very good way of putting it. The intent, it demonstrated to me that they actually got what Fable was all about. Yep. And that was the thing I was worried about. And, to be fair to Microsoft, this is a bit of a risk because, when Sony give, Naughty Dog a project or Naughty Dog come to Sony with a project, Sony can sit back and think, yeah, they're probably going to make a good hash of this. This is going to be pretty good, or Insomniac or whoever. But we've given an IP to a brand new studio. There is a big amount of risk that goes with that for Microsoft because it's going to cost them a lot of money and they can't really afford this to be a flop and stuff. And I think Matt Booty's comments around Playground Games were a little bit cautious, actually. I can't quite remember it word for word, but he said it's kind of shaping up to be good. And I thought that was a little bit negative, actually. But I kind of get where he's coming from because it is still a risk and there's no absolute guarantee that Fable will be what everyone wants it to be.
Because I think that he's someone, again, and this is one of the other problems with Microsoft, is that it's very heavily production-led and not creatively led. And that studio is creatively led. You can see it just in the Forza stuff. And I speak to, and Mr. Tushi can talk about Forza all day long because he's an expert. I mean, I'm nowhere near as intelligent as him or well informed as him, should I say, in terms of that game. So he can definitely take apart my comments. But I think that studio, as long as they're allowed to creatively develop that game and make sure that it's well conceived, it will be fantastic. And I just think it's a studio maybe similar to the way that Obsidian runs, that has, and I'm not saying the others don't, but that has huge budgets but work in a very specific way. And let's be honest, it's such a huge game, not just in terms of what it's trying to deliver this gen compared to when the first Fable came out, not just in scope and size, but to deliver a complete experience. And an open action RPG of that ilk is not always easy to pull off. So maybe Microsoft wanted them to be a little less sort of extravagant or huge or worldly with it, and said, look, can you confine it a little bit? And I think that if any studio can can kick back at Mark Booty and say, you don't know what you're talking about, leave it to us. I think it's got to be Playground Games. Any other studio, whether it's Rare, you've seen Rare, right? They were the darlings when they were bought 375 million, and then they were left to, in my opinion, a lot of people left. They were left to drift, and and they're coming back with a few bits and pieces. But look at the amount of time it's been in Microsoft stable. And I think, but Playground Games for me has been the most consistent. And I'd love to hear Mr. Tushi's comments.
Well, strangely enough, I'm going to throw a game at each of you. So be ready to catch, and we'll go to Mr. Tushi first. So Forza, we obviously saw a trailer. Excited for Forza? What's Forza going to be?
I'm definitely excited for Forza. I'm on Forza Horizon nearly every day.
Okay.
A little quick interesting fact. Where I live, 23 minutes drive away from me is Playground Games.
Oh, wow.
And 42 minutes the other way is where Rare is.
Excellent. You're going to get yourself a job then. You could commute.
I'll have to go and spy in the window one day and see what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Pux, I'm going to throw one at you. Let's go with Psychonauts. What does that mean for you?
I love 3D platformers, and this is something that I am looking forward to, and I'm really looking forward to playing it as well. I mean, admittedly, sorry to those in the chat if you're a big fan of Psychonauts. I have not played the first one, but as a 3D platforming fan, I'm really looking forward to it based on what I saw on the gameplay reveal we saw a couple of weeks ago.
Awesome. And one, I'm going to throw one at you, VJ, but I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball. I'm going to throw you Compulsion Games. We don't even know what they're up to.
I think that.
What did you make of We Happy Few?
I'm not too sure about We Happy Few, but I like that studio, and it's the one that has a Bioshock feel to it, right? In terms of their graphic style, right? And in terms of the narrative, right? Is that the one? Have I got that right?
Well, it's the one they wear the masks and they have to take the pill. It's kind of like a sort of a trendy 60s kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, I think it's the right. I think it's the right one. No, definitely. No, I've just pulled it up. Yeah, it's definitely the one that I've been thinking about in terms of the Bioshock vibe. And I mean, I love Bioshock 1 and 2, and I love Bioshock 3. I think Ken Levine, should I say? I don't know where he is now, but I think it's another guy, him and David Jaffe, that stand out for me as people that were in the industry and then left and haven't quite made it back in again in terms of how they push gaming forward. And I think Compulsion Games kind of gives me that vibe. So they're on my list as someone to watch. I don't know how We Happy Few is going to play out, but I think that this game in particular is probably something that's been in development for while Microsoft were acquiring them. So I don't think it's going to sort of show. So if you take Obsidian, right, you had Outer Worlds, right, which they wanted to make it something far more than it was, right? But they were restrained by budget. They were working for a third-party developer. They had a deadline to hit. So I think after We Happy Few, I'm not saying it'll be good or bad, but once that, I think their next game will really show how good they are as a studio in terms of whatever the product is that they end up making.
Now, that's an interesting point, and I'd heard that actually Microsoft bought Obsidian because of Avowed. So not only did they buy the studio, they kind of bought the IP that went with it as well. So
they've got a history of doing that. They did it with Rare.
Yeah.
They did it with Bungie. Bungie was 21% owned by Take-Two, right?
Okay, wow.
Oh, hello again. We're knocking on your door with some more money. So,
but obviously Microsoft are aware what Compulsion are working on, and they've obviously felt that was enough to buy the studio for. So that is exciting in its own right. So,
it's a good fit, I believe, because just their style, just the way they just seem a really good fit for Microsoft. Xbox, in my opinion. I think if it was bought by Sony or something, you'd say, is that really a right fit? I think they found their right home, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Okay, well, we're kind of wrapping up, I'm afraid, guys. We've had a few latecomers. Obviously, this will be uploaded. YouTube does this horrible thing where it will live stream, but it takes actually about 24 hours to upload the video. So what I've done is I've created a section on the YouTube channel where it's a playlist, basically, and you can see the streamed videos instantly. And then the uploaded video in about 24 hours will be uploaded to the normal section. But Puxley, any last sort of comments in the chat that we need to address?
Nothing in particular that I've noticed. A lot of people agreeing with a lot of the comments, really.
Yeah.
Indie Gamer saying that a lot of people missed out on the first Psychonauts because it was a cult hit. Yeah, I've heard it's got a big cult following. I might have to see if I can jump back into it. A comment here from KStubber82. Thanks for tuning in, saying, I think Compulsion could be a bit of a dark horse, which I think is quite an interesting comment.
I completely agree.
And there's a lot of agreements, really, just on what we're saying. Nothing in particular I think we need to catch up on. I think we've covered.
Now, that's cool. Indie Gamers put in there, Ken Levine is awesome. He's gone quiet. I know he was quite outspoken during the Bioshock sort of development. I don't know what he's up to now. If you know Indie, just quickly drop a message in there. But I don't know what Ken Levine's up to.
Yeah, you know what? When the sorry, I'm really sorry to interrupt. But you know, when we were discussing, I think on this very podcast about the issues that Halo was having and where it was sitting and how do we get it back on track, he was the one guy that I said from a creative standpoint, and he's known to be able to take a good game and polish it into a great game, but he needs to also be saddled with was it Rod Ferguson that was brought in to help ship Bioshock Infinite, if I remember my memory serves me right. And I said, look, even if you can't bring those guys in, at least call them and get their perspective or their experience, right, in terms of what they should do. I mean, it was a bit of a far out thought there, but yeah, just sort of throw that in there as a thought at the time.
That's a nice little insight, actually. No, I appreciate that. Well, we've kind of come to the end of our topics now. I was kind of, I've been looking at the analytics. We're a new channel. I'm not going to keep repeating all of this, but we are a new channel, and I'm ever so grateful for everyone on the panel. I'm grateful for everyone in the chat, every single one of the subs that we have, and anyone who hosts their own YouTube channel knows that you have to earn your subs. It's not quite like Twitter where you can follow someone and they follow you back. You have to earn every single sub. And this channel really is about all of the community that we're trying to build up there. And like I said before, you guys really are the bedrock. I'm really grateful for Mr. Tushi. It's your first time on the show, mate. Thank you for coming on. Absolutely awesome to hear your views. Where can we find you on social media?
You can find me anywhere as Mr. Tushi on Xbox, PlayStation, Twitter, Facebook. Also, you can find me on Xbox on every Saturday night, 9 p.m. as the community game night. Everyone's welcome, any level. We're trying to concentrate around games around Game Pass, so it's easier for people to access all the games that we play. That's about it, really.
That's such an awesome idea. No, you're more than welcome, my friend. And to be honest, that's such an awesome idea. And you know what? Game Pass is yet again another enabler for things like this, because if you've got Game Pass, then you've got every game in Game Pass, and that is such an awesome service. And I know Xbox fans know this, and I'm sure as we going back to the top of the show, Sony fans probably hate the fact that we've got Game Pass, but it's an awesome service. VJ. As always, thank you very much for being on the show. I do appreciate your time. You've given up the most precious thing you could, all of you, the time to give us your comments and your thoughts. Really appreciate it. Where can we find you on Twitter, and what have you been up to on socials?
You can find me at VJ at Viewpoint Gaming, and I just want to say thank you so much for having me back on again, Phlapp, Puxley. And it's been a long time since I wanted to have a chat with Mr. Tushi and Indie Gamer. And I got my wish with Indie Gamer answered last week, and today I've got Mr. Tushi. So I really appreciate that. And I love discussing games and the gaming industry, and this is a fantastic outlet which allows me to do so. So yeah, it's much appreciated.
Oh, it's awesome to have you on. And to be honest, I'll take your point. It's like Lance and a boil, isn't it? Because, particularly as Xbox fans, we get so frustrated with, some of the strange decisions that go on and stuff. And, it all builds up inside, and it's nice to have a voice. And like I say, this is why I want to get the chat involved and like reading stuff out from the chat, because, this is your chance for you guys to have a voice, and we'll read it out and we'll pick up and we'll agree. Sometimes we'll disagree, but it's great to have you here. Pux, where can we find you?
Hello, yes, you can find me on Twitter at PuxleyAR, and you can also find me on Xbox, which is simply Puxley as well, as you see on the screen. So I don't have an awful lot of time to do multiplayer gaming, but if I do get some time, maybe we can play some games sometime, and we'll check it out.
That would be awesome. And to be honest, as a channel, we are trying to build, we're trying to put more content out there. And to be honest, you guys listening, we really appreciate your comments, either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It's fine either way. We're just trying to find our feet. So Pux and I are going to be doing midweek sort of catch-up shows, which is just like a small version of this, basically, but with sort of relevant gaming news, talking about topics that are probably a little bit too small to sort of talk about on the podcast. So we'll be doing those every week, only about 20 minutes long, because people's retention rates, they don't hang around too long. So if we can make it short and sharp, give you guys the latest news and our opinions on the news, that's fine. We're also starting to do sort of gameplay videos as well, live gameplay videos, where we just talk over videos we play, but we're trying to, inject some humor into these games, because games can be silly, and some of the bugs that we come across, it's about having a laugh at the end of the day and being fun. We like revisiting some of the old games. We did what did we do? Wolfenstein Youngblood, which wasn't met with great sort of reception, and didn't score too highly on Metacritic, but we loved playing it. And actually, I've got another one. I've got the second part of that uploading tomorrow, 9:15, I believe, UK time. I've scheduled it for them. So we're just trying to get content up. Give us a thumbs up, thumbs down if you do or don't like our stuff, guys. We will use you as our sort of benchmark and our guide as to what it is you like and what don't like. But thank you very much once again. Really appreciate everyone's support. It's an amazing community. Let's keep going. Let's stick with it. I've got a great show lined up next week. I'm so excited for some of the guests I've got coming up. Please like, share, subscribe. We want to build the channel as much as we can, get the news out, get the word out, and we'll do it all again soon. So see you then, and thank you from Green Pass Gaming.